Ladies and gentlemen, for the love of God, as you're listening to this in the comments section, you can say nothing's ever going to happen. Oh my God. But you have to understand that once you do that, you're ignoring the fact that Republicans are going to take the House. Impeachment is right around the corner. They're going to take the Senate almost certainly. What we learned from the Durham probe special counsel will lead to further investigations. They're going to impeach Joe Biden in 2023, probably numerous impeachments. Graft and bribery could be they're easily proven within those emails. How can you use your influence on the company's behalf? 10% to the big man, being Joe. So the pendulum has already begun to swing. Durham, okay, so here, CNN primary source for Trump-Russia dossier acquitted. Very bizarre on all four counts. Axios key Steele dossier source, Igor Danchenko, acquitted of lying to the FBI. Here's why he was acquitted. And it's what we talked about. I mean, I talked about this. I thought at least one conviction of the four, but you had FBI officials and agents, just like you had James Baker, the top legal counsel during the Sussman trial. They never admitted to being duped because they were in on it. So we'll just read. Danchenko acquitted on all counts in Politico. You have to understand something. The people who don't understand this, like Democrats, media, they'll say, you couldn't prove that Trump was set up and framed. That wasn't what this trial was about. This trial, Durham, for some reason, didn't use 18 U.S. Code 371, which is what I wrote about in the Federalist. Had he used that, he could have proven, or he could have shown the world that there was this grandiose plot, but he didn't. I guess he needed more steps before 18 U.S. Code 371. If you look really quickly at the Mueller probe, second, this is what they obsessed over for just about 2 years. They found absolutely nothing. The evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges. Page 17 of the Mueller probe. So really quickly, they didn't find $1 million to verify a dossier that was purchased by Clinton. They didn't find confidential human sources that were paid $200,000 like Danchenko was. Of course he lied. Sussman did also. A D.C. jury is a D.C. jury. You're not going to be able to utilize the Federal Bureau of Investigation to indict anyone when they were breaking the law themselves, almost certainly. They knew that they were being given lies. They wanted a pretext to investigate Trump. These people hid behind bureaucracy, and John Durham either wasn't smart enough or wasn't capable. He's a brilliant prosecutor, but he did not understand what he was up against. But here, the Mueller probe, the evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges, page 17. Among other things, the evidence was not sufficient to charge any campaign official as an unregistered agent of the Kremlin. And our evidence about June 9, 2016 meeting, not sufficient to charge criminal campaign violation. Further, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in 2016. The evidence was never not sufficient. There was no evidence of anything that Trump was accused of. Okay, the Mueller probe was a categorical failure. I'll have a live stream on this tonight, but there's a lot of things to look at and to understand. You can't take this acquittal as a defeat. It's only the first step in endless investigations. What Democrats do is they hide behind bureaucracy and media. They utilize the dossier. So this is for the morally superior liberal Democrats who think that this is like some type of cope or some type of way of handling the acquittal. I don't care that Danchenko or Sussman were acquitted. These people are not that important in the overall scheme of things when it comes to setting up and framing Trump. The people who set up and framed Trump were Comey, Strzok, McCabe, Clapper, Brennan, the DNC, Clinton. That's obvious, okay? You purchased a dossier. They purchased a dossier that was completely full of lies, funneled it through the FBI, and then Durham basically asked agents, well, were you duped? Were you deceived? Did you get tricked by this? Did they lie to you? These operatives, Sussman and Danchenko. Well, what do you think these government officials are going to say? Of course, they're going to say no. They didn't lie. Well, kind of. We might not have changed things. We might have. Who knows? So you're giving a DC jury everything it needs to say, gosh, there's some doubt here. Danchenko lied. Sussman lied. But that's the way Democrats roll. They have this murky type of deceit where you can't really pin them on a lie. And then with Trump, there's definitely no benefit of the doubt, and there's no plausible deniability. And oh my God, if it's not 100% true, then it's the end of the world. So here, a federal jury has acquitted Russian policy researcher Igor Danchenko on false statement charges brought by the special counsel John Durham. The not guilty verdict delivered after a week-long trial are another defeat for Durham's investigation. The Durham probe uncovered a whole lot of information. We knew that they offered $1 million to verify the Steele dossier. It was not verified. The United States government utilized a dossier purchased by Clinton. That alone is enough to prove that Trump was set up and framed. The fact that Clinton and the DNC purchased a dossier and it was funneled through the United States government to investigate Trump and to get FISA warrants and torment everyone around Trump is categorical proof that Trump was set up and framed. They would never allow media, the Washington Post, the New York Times would never allow the reverse to take place. And so that's obvious. You'd have to have no functioning brain cells to realize that or to think that this wasn't a setup. But it was a setup through bureaucracy. And Durham wasn't good enough to understand the bureaucratic mess. And he was in on it and just didn't care, or he wasn't good enough to understand what he was up against. It was pretty obvious that the Federal Bureau of Investigation wasn't going to turn on any of their sources or on any people that lied to them, because they were in on it, so it wasn't necessarily really a lie. When Igor Danchenko gave false information to agents at the Bureau, they took it willingly. So in a sense, the DC jury couldn't really convict, because the agents on the stand said, well, when Durham asked, would you have done things differently had you been told the truth? They said, well, maybe. We don't know. Same with Sussman. Well, Sussman's lies, they could have impacted the investigation. We don't know. You're talking about a bureaucracy that's like a shape-shifting, slithering, highly malleable entity. The bureaucracy of government is like a creature that continually alters its form. And so you're not going to be able to find the intent. That's why when the Inspector General Michael Horowitz stated all of these different examples of extreme bias towards Trump, he said, well, there was no documentary or testimonial bias that the prosecutors were given. Well, of course there wasn't any. That's not the way bureaucracies work when they're leveled against somebody. This isn't rocket science. You think that if in a corporation, if you work for a corporation, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat, and 3 managers or 3 colleagues of yours turn on you, you don't think that there's a million different ways that they can kind of force you out of the company? Of course there is. And so the same thing, like when Democrats jump for joy, they don't realize that the Mueller probe found absolutely nothing on Trump, and that took a lot more resources. It was an media obsession. Nobody in media really focused on this until the Sussman trial landed with acquittal, and this was an acquittal. But you had Kevin Kleinsmith, who pled guilty. So I mean, that was right there. That should have been an actual trial, not a plea deal. It should have been an actual trial. He should have started with that. But again, this is a special counsel that got no support from Republicans. But we learned enough for endless investigations. Democrats need to be investigated the way they investigated Trump, because they actually committed crimes. Here's the difference between Donald Trump and Joe and Hunter and Hillary and Bill and a bunch of Democrats. You can actually point to crimes. If you watch the short on this channel, James Comey himself states Clinton broke the law, but no reasonable prosecutor would indict. So But again, I want a Hillary Trump 2024. I'd vote for Trump a million times in that matchup. If it was a million times, if there was a million times Hillary Trump, I'd vote Trump a million times. But this is not a devastating loss. It's just more fuel for Republicans, Trump Republicans, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, hopefully soon Tulsi Gabbard, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, James Comer, House Oversight Committee. This is just fuel for Trump Republicans to investigate in the manner the Democrats investigated. The difference being that Trump Republicans will have actual crimes to investigate. It is a crime. It is a crime, ladies and gentlemen, it is a crime to deceive the United States, the people of the United States. It is a crime to utilize the government against your direct political rivals, which is what Democrats did. He wasn't trying, that wasn't on trial. So the people, okay, Sussman and Danchenko the trials were not about setting up and framing Trump. They were about specific lies. He should have just gone ahead, Durham, and used the 18 U.S. Code 371 statutes and started asking people, well, okay, you utilized the dossier, you didn't do your due diligence, you did all of these things, you have emails where you're saying we're going to get Trump, and there's no, he's a menace, and we'll stop him. I mean, you have endless emails, not just from Strzok, of a whole bunch of agents. You could have easily proven, but I mean, again, it would have taken some political will. You got no political will. You'll have a Trump Republican House that's going to impeach Joe Biden, hopefully twice, for the way he's handled the economy as well, which has been an absolute catastrophe. But you're going into midterms with a Trump Republican Senate and a Trump Republican House. The Senate, almost certainly. And in the event that Democrats somehow keep the Senate, which would be very bizarre, just like this very bizarre acquittal, the House is where the impeachment takes place. You're definitely getting an impeachment. So, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in terms of politics. And for the people who say, oh, nothing's ever going to happen, it's like, you're not doing yourself or anyone any favors. Trump already defeated Clinton, ladies and gentlemen. To my 12-minute crowd, you have to understand, Trump already defeated an entire political establishment. When you see these like pictures of George W. Bush and President Obama hugging each other, that's a disgusting picture. That's not a beautiful picture of unity. That's, one man who started never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts in numerous countries, along with another man who destroyed a country with an alliance in Europe, in Libya, and also furthered counterinsurgency conflicts, and both of them promoted a very militarist, very immoral foreign policy and political system. So it's not, Trump came in, completely changed and altered the ballgame. And so Rome wasn't built in a day. The acquittal is very, very bizarre, but you're talking about a DC jury, and you're talking about Durham not really, either he didn't understand or he couldn't. He was trying to utilize the FBI to help him explain to the jury that they were incompetent, inept, and deceived by their own informants. And these government officials were never going to give Durham that victory. Give me your thoughts below. I mean, I found it. There were other ways that he could have prosecuted this, but he chose to pick like lies. He chose to pick people lying to government officials who wanted these informants to lie. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. I'll be here tonight for the live stream around 7, 8 p.m. Pacific. Thank you.